Hey, this is Tom Kundert from PortuGOAL.net and you're listening to the Seleção podcast.
Simões bending one for Torres. Eusebio. Oh my word! Have you ever seen anything like that?
Bem jogado por Simão, a passar por dois adversários, Simão, a tentar oferecer o golo a Figo e a bola é golo! O golo de Figo!
Rui Costa já acreditou, vai tirar para o golo, atira, golo! 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 Cristiano Ronaldo, vai para Cristiano Ronaldo, bateu, golo, 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 golo! Chuta! Gol! Gol!
And we welcome you to episode number 66 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of PortuGOAL.net. My name is Danny Pinto. I am your host. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the show as we are just now two matches, official matches, away from heading to Qatar. But first things first, these last two group matches of the Nations League, two important group matches of this Nations League for multiple reasons. Obviously, trying to secure the group, which the Seleção will try to do on the 24th and the 27th against the Czech Republic and Spain, respectively. But also, the big picture ahead in 2 months is, what is this team going to look like when they take the field in Qatar for the World Cup? So we will get all that covered for you right here on episode number 66 of the Seleção podcast with our guest today, Tom Kundert. But before we get Tom on, we just wanted to remind you of all the ways to stay connected to the show, selecaopod.com. Make sure you bookmark that on your web browser. Facebook.com/SeleçãoPod. Twitter, we're on Twitter a lot, at SeleçãoPod, also on Instagram, at SeleçãoPod. And, of course, we have our YouTube channel. Follow us and, subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you guys are giving us those 5-star ratings and those reviews wherever you can while you are listening to the platform, whatever platform you're listening to. And then if you're listening or watching us, I should say, on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. It makes our show more available to anyone who's looking to listen and watch podcasts like this. And the man that kind of started it all for us English-speaking Portuguese folks. It is early, Tom, as I try to find the words. We have Tom Kundert here of PortuGOAL.net. Of course, we're going to talk about some surprises that came across this Seleção in the last, 48 hours. But first things first, Tom. Bom dia, boa tarde. How are you?
Yeah, bom dia. It's just about, it's just boa tarde, 5 minutes here. 5 minutes past midday, but good to speak to you, Dan, and incredible dedication you show to this, to the Portuguese cause, and great to speak to you as ever. Looking forward to chatting all things Seleção.
It is meio-dia, just past meio-dia, where you are. Tom, what's for lunch?
What's for lunch? I'm probably going to have a churrasco asado with my son. He's just started school again this week and just started a new school, and it's got some strange hours. I don't know if this happens at all your side of the pond, but he's got like a couple of mornings free, and this day, what day are we on? Wednesday, isn't it? It's got a huge lunch break. So I said, I'll go over there and we'll have lunch together, give him a bit of a boost for his afternoon lessons.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, we do not have that over here. So that's good to know. That is weird, a little bit weird. But Tom, I guess first things first here. Are you on your way after lunch to have your son pick up one of these beauties right here?
Wow!
As we hit the ground running. All this. This is the real news of this week. Not sudden retirements or trying to figure out what the roster is going to look like. I want to know I already know what the roster is going to look like. They're going to be wearing these, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, there's certainly, the Portuguese designers or the FBF can't really be accused of being, over conservative, can they? It's really a very, very different kit. And
I don't know
yeah,
about I mean, maybe a little thought. I don't know. Maybe just make sure it's not being designed by you know. I will say this, and I will stop sharing that one to bring up another one here. But I do think that it on the surface it looks a lot better once the players are wearing. As I bring up another picture, these are pictures courtesy of the Twitter account for the Seleção. It does look better. I actually think the white one looks pretty clean, and I think it's gonna look nice once we're on the field. But it's amazing what the uproar or what causes an uproar.
yeah.
But are these my favorite, Tom? I would say no. But and I don't think I'm going out on the limb here. But it's just it's just fun. It's just
Imagine,
clothes.
Danny, imagine they win the World Cup. Everyone's going to be wearing them.
Tom, when those were they turquoise, neon green, whatever the hell they were in 2016.
2006? Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. That one.
When those came out, everybody was kind of scratching their heads. Now those things are revered as anything else. Now, style and fashion are all acquired tastes. So but yeah, those are the jerseys are out. The Seleção has re-upped with Sag as one of their sponsors until 2028. I think that just about covers it for what's going on this week. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Yeah, I had a huge reaction to the article we put up about the new kits as well. Very kind of in-depth explanation by the FBF of why they designed it the way they did. The whole idea is to kind of have the idea of the Portuguese flag draped around the players. And that's kind of, depicted on the pictures. I agree with you, Dan. I quite like that white one. I must admit, it's growing on me. I think it's a good word to use there. Clean. Yeah, it looks quite nice. Not too sure about the other one at all, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully, like you said, from January onwards, this will be the most sold item of clothing in the whole history of the Portuguese nation.
With a nice star right over the crest. That'd be the literal cherry on top of that sundae. But let's get to stuff that actually matters when it comes to what is going on the field and off the field here. So as we all know now, Rafa Silva earlier this week announced his retirement from international football with the Seleção. 29 years old. A bit of a shock to those just kind of looking at it on the surface. Rafa was never a star player, but I felt that anytime he was selected, he could have been used in a way to. He has something, Tom, that this team kind of lacks, which is just down the field speed and something that you can change a game with, but. What were your thoughts on his? Because to me it was sudden because he was selected and all of a sudden 2-3 days later he's now saying no more for me.
Yeah, it was a huge shock, I think, for everyone. Real surprise. I mean, just thinking about it generally, Danny, from the individual point of view. I mean, all players, what do they talk about? When they're dreaming, when they're growing up, when they're dreaming of becoming a professional footballer. What is it that really is almost kind of the end goal? It's kind of to shine in the World Cup, isn't it? To possibly win the World Cup or go as far as possible, to be on that global stage where literally the whole world is watching you. So just 2 months before the World Cup, Rafa Silva, arguably in the form of his life, has been superb. The start of this season for Benfica, slightly different position than he usually plays. Usually plays on the wings, of course, and his being moved more centrally, and it certainly seems to be suiting his game, scoring goals, getting assists. Like you said, we all know Rafa is just an incredible dribbler, high-speed dribbler, and just that raw pace. I agree with you entirely. It's one thing which is a little bit lacking in, you look at Portugal's roster, And you look at their star players who are world-class players. You can't kind of deny it. Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, just Joao Cancelo, even Ronaldo himself. These players which are rightly lauded, as some of the best footballers on the planet. None of them, even Joao Felix, I'd put into this category. None of them are really known for their pace. They are great footballers. They've got great talents, but that's one thing which kind of made Rafa stand out from the rest. So yeah, it's a shame that that option will not be available to Fernando Santos. Having said all of that, you alluded to it earlier, Danny. He hasn't really, we have to be honest, hasn't really been much of an option for Portugal under Fernando Santos. He always seems to be in the squad or around the squad, but really has hardly ever played. The only game really I can remember him making, a real meaningful contribution was that opening game at Euro 2020 against Hungary, when he came on as a substitute and just was involved in all 3 goals as Portugal went from 0-0 to 3-0 to win that first game at Euro 2022 against Hungary. But apart from that, you have to say I can't really remember him, doing much in a Portugal shirt. To be brutally honest, and he never scored a goal for Portugal, of course. Nope. So yeah, it's it is a surprise. It is a shock. I feel a bit, I feel a bit bad for Rafa himself. I don't know. We really don't know what the reason is, but he has his own reasons. He said it was personal reasons. So I just hope it's nothing too serious in his personal life or whatever, and he can continue having his career as normal in club football. And but as far as how it will affect Portugal's chances of going deep in the World Cup or going far in the World Cup, I don't really think it will have too much of of an effect.
Yeah, you mentioned the Hungary match in this last Euro. Obviously, that's the one that jumps out to probably everyone. For me, he was always such an intriguing player because of his pace. 2 other games kind of stand out for me in, one in a what if, and then one in a this is how you would use him properly. The what if was, and again, we all know what happened in 2016, but there was a friendly against England in which Bruno Alves, he karate chops or almost karate chops Harry Kane in I would say maybe in the opening 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, I remember that well. Yep.
And he goes out, he gets a red, and then tactically they take out Rafa Silva right at the beginning of the game, and then we never saw him in Euro 2016. Now, obviously, we'll take whatever happened in 2016. The other game that I remember vividly is the final of the Nations League, when he came on after Portugal had already secured their first goal after Gonçalo Guedes had scored. And to me, it was one of the better jobs of coaching that Fernando Santos had done, simply because, the history with Fernando Santos in his style of coaching is we have the lead. Now it's time to sit on it. They didn't sit. And Rafa Silva was used, I think, in a way that he should have been used, which is a change of pace, a perfect answer to a counterattack once the opposing team is trying to equalize or trying to get another goal. So to me, those are the 2, along with the game against Hungary in the Euros, where you kind of saw everything that Rafa could do. But it just never materialized into something long term. And will it be a detriment to the Seleção in Qatar? I doubt. I mean, again, I think there's a lot to be said about a player of his quality being available for a World Cup. And you alluded to it. I had a conversation with Cristiano Oliveira of the Benfica podcast last night, where it's like, I get why he is making the decision, because he has been called up many times. He's been off the team sheet many games and been left on the bench for many games. and in the form that he is right now, which is as good as he's ever been, why am I going to risk injury for a manager who just doesn't seem to utilize my abilities the way we think that he should? But also, it's like it's a World Cup, and at 29, this is likely his last one. So there's a lot of conflicting. I think I'm more disappointed. I think, and that was the word Cristiano and I used, is that I'm disappointed initially because how could you say no to the World Cup? But at the same time, I get it. I don't know. It's just a very strange situation.
Yeah, I don't really want to go too much into the reasons behind it because we don't really know, do we, Dan?
We don't.
Really
it's all
know.
speculation on my part here.
It might be something to do with that. Of course, there was also the story a few months ago of apparently, the FPF or people at the FPF or sources at the FPF had let it be known that they were not pleased with his attitude, and I think the phrase they used was he has a complicated personality or something. But so I don't know if that's kind of mixed in with it. There was some feeling also. I remember some talk that Rafa Silva himself, or maybe some of his teammates or people at Benfica, thought it was a little bit disappointing how nobody at the FPF really came out and did, vigorously denied those reports. Although, having said that, Fernando Santos himself, said they were just lies. But there wasn't really a really strong response saying, this is just complete untrue. So you don't know. We don't really know.
He also was likely not to admit that there would be issues.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be fair there. The one thing I will say, Tom, and maybe kind of goes to that, there is a Jorge Mendes kind of cloud hanging not only over Portuguese football but sometimes over the national team, and if it for the most part there are a lot of Jorge Mendes guys on this national team, and rightfully so, because Jorge Mendes is not an awful player agent. He's the best in the world, arguably, and he has top-notch clients. But there isn't a lot of, I guess there isn't a lot of outcry, and again, we don't know why. But like looking at the Bruno Fernandes this morning was the player representative for the media or to the media from the Seleção. And he said, and this is translated from Portuguese, so the meaning here might be lost here. But he said, in terms of Rafa, I didn't talk to Rafa, and I don't think I should. It is his decision, which must be respected. Each person has their own way of solving problems. The most important thing is that while he was here, he helped a lot. He is a European and Nations League champion, so we have to be grateful for Rafa for what he did in the national team. He is an excellent player. Mm-hmm. It sounds, again, it's translated from English to Portuguese, but it sounds like one of those canned answers that you just be like, all right, here's what you do. There's a scene in a movie called Bull Durham where it's like you go through your media cliches as you become a professional, just so that you don't give the media anything. And it seems like that's a quote that really doesn't give the media anything. But again, we don't know. We can only speculate. But I think again, it was just sudden. It was weird, and something just doesn't add. But I just obviously I hope the best for Rafa going forward. And who's to say that this is a 100% retirement? I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Let's wait and see. He's always just, I suppose, just the final thing I'd say is an interesting character because he's a little bit kind of always been on the outside looking in. And what do I mean by that? Virtually every single Portuguese player, almost, I'd say, must be about 90% of every player who gets into the Portugal national squad came through one of the big three academies. They either came through Benfica or Sporting or Porto. You just look at it, and it's almost always like that. Just a few, obviously, the Brazilian-born ones that doesn't apply to. But that's very, very common, and it's very unusual for a player who didn't come through those academies to make it all the way to the national team. And Rafa, of course, is one of those players, is one of those few exceptions. He started off I think it was, I can't remember if it was Alverca. I think it was somewhere here near Lisbon, then went up to Braga, of course, and that's where he really made a name for himself. But he wasn't from the Benfica Academy. He wasn't from the Sporting Academy. He wasn't from the Porto Academy. So immediately he's a little bit kind of out of the loop in respect of all the other players, who all know each other from, a very young age. And so, yeah, maybe that he kind of never really felt part of the group. I don't know. But yeah, like you say, it's all speculation. Let's just hope that he continues having a great career, because I tell you one thing, Danny, when he's on it, and he's been on it all of this season, he's one of the most exciting players you can hope to watch. He's just such I suppose you could say he's a one-trick pony, but my God, what a trick it is. It's just so fast. When he, puts on those afterburners and just dribbles past almost the entire team. I remember Jorge Jesus saying once, if he had a better decision-making ability, which we all know that's his kind of Achilles heel, he gets himself into brilliant positions to shoot or to cross, but then quite often makes the wrong decision. If he did have better decision-making ability, he would definitely be one of the best players in the world, without a doubt. So, when he gets it right, it's great to see.
We're talking with Tom Kundert here of PortuGOAL.net. We are talking about Rafa Silva's sudden retirement, and obviously we're going to be looking at the roster here for the upcoming Nations League matches as Portugal tries to secure their spot as group winners. Still all to play for, just 1 point behind Spain with 2 matches to go on the road away to the Czech Republic on the 24th, and then hopefully the all-important game on the 27th in Braga, taking on Spain. So, Tom, let's look at the roster that was called up. So before we do that, obviously there are 2 changes to the roster. Rafa Silva is obviously out. Gonçalo Ramos gets called up by Fernando Santos for his first senior call up, and then also Rafael Guerreiro, who was called up, was not in action for Dortmund this past weekend. He is out, and Mario Rui's still doing his thing, and he gets called back. But let's take a look at the roster as I pull up. There we are. As we pull up the roster here, and Tom, what I'd like to do is kind of go through this position by position and kind of looking at not only what we have going right now, but what we could see, in Qatar in 2 months' time. I think in terms of goalkeeping, I think this is your 3. This is very much set. What do you think of Diogo Costa, José Sá, and Rui Patricio?
Yeah, no real arguments there. I think they're probably the best 3 Portuguese goalkeepers at this time. And yeah, it's pretty good to see that, isn't it? That's 3 really top quality goalkeepers. I think I'd be quite happy for any of those to be between the sticks. So yeah, nothing really to say much here.
The one thing I will ask you is, so if memory serves, these 3 were called up for the June matches. I believe José Sá had suffered an injury right at the end of Wolves' season, and I believe it was Rui Silva coming in. So, but the reason why I bring this up is, in those 4 matches in June, Diogo Costa and Rui Patricio split the 4 matches. It was Diogo Costa, then Patricio, Diogo Costa, then Patricio. What was your thought on that at the time, and does that tell you that Fernando Santos is still maybe unsure of who his number 1 is, or do you think it is Diogo Costa's to lose?
Yeah, I think it's Diogo Costa 100%. I think he only did that because I suppose he doesn't want to completely exclude Rui Patricio at the moment. Give him some playing time. But yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. We have to remember, Danny, of course, Diogo Costa was called up and got his first start in the World Cup playoffs. So, what a huge responsibility that was coming into the Portugal side. I remember a lot of people actually were questioning that decision by Fernando Santos, saying, talk about heaping pressure onto someone, giving them their debut in, all or nothing matches. But yeah, Portugal played well those 2 matches. He didn't have too much to do, but what he did have to do, he did well. Same with the Nations League matches. He's been superb for Porto. Got a good background to him, of course, with the under-21s as well. Always putting good performances. One of these goalkeepers, I really can't remember him making a mistake. I don't know if you can, Danny. He's just. I think I remember maybe a Champions League game against Liverpool or something, but it's just, he's just so consistent. He's so good coming up, and is what is known in Portugal, I suppose, as, and I think this is good for international football, is a classic big three goalkeeper. What do I mean by that? You get goalkeepers for, Benfica, Porto, and Sporting. Let's face it, they're so much better than most of the rest of the league that they're not going to have to work very much. They're going to have to be on their game and make one or two saves a game. And so that calls for, great powers of concentration, much more than, being an actual brilliant shot stopper or, dealing with crosses or whatever. You just have to be on your game the whole time, really concentrated, really focused. So when you are called into action, you manage to make the save. And that's exactly what Diogo Costa has been doing ever since he's got into that Porto side. So, yeah, I think for me, no doubts about he will be Portugal's number one at the World Cup.
Okay, let's go ahead and move over to the defense here as I get... There we are. So, name to the squad, Diogo Dalot, João Cancelo on the right side, Danilo Pereira, Pep, Ruben Dias, and the returning Thiago Jaló. And then Nuno Mendes and Rafael Guerreiro. Obviously, we mentioned Rafael Guerreiro out due to injury, Mario Rui in. I will say that my thoughts on the right side is that is likely the starting and backup pair there of João Cancelo and Diogo Dalot, barring any injury or any massive changes in form on either Cancelo or the Dalot side or anybody on the outside looking in. And I think if healthy, I think Nuno Mendes and Rafael Guerreiro will be the players on the left. My question to you is, and obviously weigh in on the left and the right-hand side as well, but my question to you is in the center of this defense with the center backs. Ruben Dias is obviously the anchor there. Pep is obviously the man who has plied his trade there for the last almost now 15 years. It looks like Danilo Pereira is entrenched as the third center back. And what's left now is to figure out who this fourth center back is going to be. We've seen David Carmo, we've seen Domingos Duarte called up in these in the June matches, but they didn't play a single minute, and they were actually alternating on the player sheet or on the team sheet. Where do you see this defense in terms of being set for Qatar based on these call-ups?
Yep, Dan, agree. Everything you said there. I think the only spot here under discussion is the fourth centre back because no doubt about it, Mendes and Guerreiro are the left backs, Dalot and Cancelo are the right backs. I think that's pretty much set in stone now. Pep and Diaz, of course, they'll be the first choice centre back. It's interesting here, Danny, that of course when Portugal announced the squad, when the FBF announced the squad, they categorised them, like you're showing there on the screen, into goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and so forth. And so Danilo Pereira is listed as a defender, and that tells us really everything we need to know. Also, of course, his start of his career for Portugal, he was always playing as a midfielder. He played as that double pivot alongside William for, so many games. But now I think Fernando Santos definitely sees him as the first choice replacement centre-back, if anything happens, for Pep and Diaz. And that was even confirmed in the Nations League games in June, wasn't it? 4 games, every single game Danilo played. And I think didn't even give David Carmo, who was in the squad then, didn't even give him, a single minute. So those 3 would definitely be going to Qatar. So the only question is, the second backup centre-back. It's interesting, Thiago Jaló has been called in. Carmo, of course, he moved from Braga to Porto this season. Hasn't played much because Sergio Conceição, didn't even select him. He was actually suspended, I think, for the first couple of games. And then Sergio Conceição played Marcano the Spanish centre-back who had a good start to the season, scored a couple of goals, so he kept his place. And it's only really the last couple of weeks that David Carmo has got into that Porto side. So that could also be another explanation for why he's not in this squad. Also, Thiago Jallo has an added advantage in that he, as well as playing for centre-back at Lille, he also plays at full-back. So, he got a good bit of utility there if there's big injury problems. So, yeah, I suppose that's the only really question mark out of the defenders. Will Thiago Jallo go to the World Cup, or perhaps if David Carmo, in the remaining month or so of club action before the World Cup squad is announced, maybe if he gets regular playing time at Porto and he starts on top form, he might just push himself into the squad. I think it's pretty much between those two.
Yeah, and I looking at the old man here in Pep, I know that he played in the Champions League match, was rested and then was off the team sheet the last 2 league matches. So I think that Sergio Conceição was trying to obviously preserve him for as much as he can, and obviously that could be to the benefit of this call up, given that Portugal plays 2 matches in 4 days, and they're very important matches for the future of the nation, or of the national team, with their aspirations of winning the Nations League. But it'll be interesting to see how he is used heading into Qatar. And yeah, Jallo is right now, the next man up in terms of number 4. And again, these are good problems to have, I guess, Tom, when we're talking about our 4th center back, instead of trying to figure out who our starting pairing will be. But it's important because, Ruben Dias, for as great as he is, he's had a few knocks in the last year or so. Pep has, he's 39 years old. The wheels are definitely not as fast, nor are they as sturdy as they used to be. And for as well as I thought Danilo played this summer for the Seleção in that center back role, he is not a natural center back. So they do have the depth there, and you talk about the David Carmo, you talk about Domingos Duarte, you have Gonçalo Inácio at Sporting, a number of younger players as well at the disposal. But it does seem like this is kind of like the group that you are going to try to pick your 4 out of, and it does seem that 3 of those are already kind of set in stone there. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season does go for the center back position for this national team, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this is, I suppose, the only thing we can say here is that for years we've been worried, haven't we, about the centre-back position and kind of lack of options and lack of up-and-coming players. But now, all of a sudden, thankfully, it looks like there's some, very high-quality players emerging in that position. You mentioned there Gonçalo Inácio, at Sporting. Still very young, 21 years old. He's been a regular there for 2 or 3 years. So, he's probably going to be in the setup in the future. And of course, we have to quick shout out to Antonio Silva.
Absolutely.
Who's just been coming to the Benfica side because of injuries. 18 years old. He's been absolutely outstanding, including against Juventus away. He was possibly one of the man of the match in that game. He was absolutely brilliant and, not overawed at all. So, yeah, in terms of the future, it's certainly looking, a bit brighter, a bit more optimistic.
We move over now to the midfield as we're talking with Tom Kundert here of PortuGOAL.net, as we are looking at the roster for the upcoming Nations League group matches, the last 2 matches of group play for the Seleção. João Palhinha, Ruben Neves, Bernardo Silva, Bruno Fernandes, João Mário makes his return to the fold, Mateus Nunes, Vitinha, and William Carvalho. To me, this is the group, Tom, and maybe with the forwards, but I think that this is the group that could have a little bit more fluctuation between now and Qatar. There's always the hope of that we all have for Renato Santos to find his way back to this national team, although he is having a bit of a tough go of it right now at PSG, not getting consistent playing time, fighting injury again. Another another part of the old guard, João Moutinho, not part of this call-up. This could be his final, or this could be the end of his national team career. This also could be kind of a what sometimes we call a veterans day off here in the States, where maybe he's just not going to be part of this call-up, but will be part of Qatar. But what do you think of this group right here, and who do you think is maybe not on sure footing, and who could be coming into the fold maybe in the next couple of months, if given that they're not on the team right now?
Yeah, it's such an embarrassment of riches, isn't it? So many options, really. Portugal have got in midfield. It's a pretty good list, isn't it? As it is. I mean, I suppose people can question a little bit João Mario, but on the evidence of this season alone, he also has been superb. Possibly played back to his very best, and of course we all know in the past, not least in 2016, what a great servant he has been under Fernando Santos for the Portugal team. So yeah, he's there on merit, I would say. It's like you mentioned there, when you can leave out players of the quality of Renato Sanches. Well, actually, I think he's injured again, didn't he? Had another knock. That's why he wasn't called up for this. And also on that, another option is Otavio, which, of course, he's had a poor start to the season. He's had some injury problems as well. But, you can't forget when he came into the Portugal side, again, going back to those playoff games, he was excellent, really good. Again, offered something which some of these, kind of more cultured, elegant players maybe lack a little bit. It's just, a lot of bite in there, a lot of energy, really kind of, getting in the faces of the opposition, doing the kind of ugly stuff well. So he also, is somebody who offers, some very useful attributes, I would say, for Fernando Santos. So that's, I suppose, on one hand, Danny, I agree with you. I mean, just those two players themselves, Renato Sanches and Otavio, they certainly wouldn't have given up hopes of getting on the squad. But, who do they come in for? You look at this list, I mean, just the way these players have started the season. Palhinha, sensational form at Fulham.
He's been so good to watch. Yeah.
William Carvalho also, absolutely outstanding. He's been for Betis. They're flying in La Liga, and he's just getting rave reports. Vitinha just slotted in perfectly. A lot of people thought he might have done what a lot of young Portuguese players do. Talking about Sanchez, of course, Renato Sanchez, and made a move a bit too young, a bit too early, perhaps, bitten off more than he can chew. Not a bit of it. He's straight in that PSG side, he's an integral part of it, playing really well, playing alongside Neymar and, Mbappe and Messi. What must that do to your confidence as much as anything else? And then Matheus Nunes, of course, got a big move also to England. So then you've got, of course, Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo Silva. There's no way that those two aren't going to be picked. And Neves, I thought, actually, Ruben Neves was perhaps one of the standouts in the Nations League game, Nations League games in June. So yeah, it's really, Portugal are absolutely stacked at this point in time in midfield, and I think there's going to be a couple of players at least who are going to miss out, and they're going to be a bit unlucky, because perhaps if they were in almost any other generation, they would have been in the squad.
Yeah, and we finish up here with the forwards and the wingers with Cristiano Ronaldo, Diogo Jota, Pedro Neto, who I'm so excited to see back in the fold here with the national team. A player like him was definitely missed at the Euros last summer. João Felix, he is back. We mentioned Rafa Silva, his retirement now, with Gonçalo Ramos in the fold there. Rafael Leão and Ricardo Horta. Again, you don't have Gonçalo Guedes after he made his move to Wolves. He has been a regular call-up. André Silva losing his spot with his club as a starter, obviously not meriting at the moment a call-up. Tom, I could see this being the 7 as I count here, well, with the exception of Rafa Silva. So there's a spot now left open. It's open for for an opportunity for a player like Gonçalo Ramos to come aboard. Bot is still out there if he continues playing as well as he can. But it does seem like, again, it's a good spot for Portugal to have if Fernando Santos can use this talent to the best of each of their abilities in a team concept here. But what are your thoughts of this group of players, and anybody there outside of Rafa Silva do you think is in question to make it to Qatar based on form right now?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We just went through the midfielders and saying how all of them have really been in sparkling form since the start of the season. You look at this list, and unfortunately, I suppose it's good in one way that the World Cup is still a couple of months away, because you look at this list and a lot of them are really, a long way from their best form. Of course, Cristiano Ronaldo, we all know, hardly played for Man United. He's only got one goal from the penalty spot so far. Diogo Jota, he's been injured for most of the season, just come back recently. Pedro Neto's an interesting one, of course, was part of this Portugal squad before that terrible injury of his, was actually in the team, let alone the squad. He was looking really good, fantastic in England, in the running for young player of the season until he got that unfortunate injury. It's interesting because, most of I haven't seen Wolves games this season, but most of the criticism or the reviews I've read about, how they're performing are suggesting that Neto, hasn't really recaptured that form yet. So, hopefully he will do. And of course, Joao Felix, which unfortunately is really just more the same from him. He just so much talent, such a perhaps pound for pound the most talented Portuguese player in this squad, but just doesn't be able to seem to, show that at Atletico Madrid, or isn't being played in a system which allows him to show it.
He's got to get out of there, Tom. I mean, I know injuries have played a part as well, but I mean, it's Atletico with Simeone. That's just not for him.
Yeah. It's just not working, is it? So you look at this squad. Okay, Ronaldo is, whether he plays, it's a completely different discussion, isn't it? Whether he plays 90 minutes every game, but we won't go into that right now. But, basically there's probably a spot for one or two of these others. And I think it's probably going to be a case of, whoever hits form at the right time. Like I said, Jota just came back. Hopefully he gets up and running, because he has been the regular partner of Ronaldo in the most recent games. And I think that's probably Fernando Santos' first choice at the moment. Rafa Silva, of course, was out of all of these players the one in the best form. Rafa Silva is
no kidding.
no longer available. And Rafael Leao as well. He's done some good stuff already this season, so high hopes for him. It's interesting that, of course, Gonçalo Ramos has been called in as replacement for Rafa Silva. And also, do you think this may open up the door for one or two, for maybe a bit of a surprise selection? I know a few people have been talking about Fabio Carvalho, for example, the young, the young Liverpool recruit this season, who they got from Fulham, has looked really good whenever he's come on. Of course, he's not going to be playing 90 minutes every minute, far from it, at Liverpool. But, he's also a player, quite explosive skill set, who might be a bit of a surprise. I suppose that's up to Santos, isn't it?
Well, you know what, Tom? Fernando Sanchez had an explosive player before in terms of pace and speed. He just retired. Another young player who was playing out of his mind leading up to the Euros in Pot, never saw a minute. So, Fabio Carvalho could do whatever he wants, but I'm just not convinced that Fernando Sanchez would use him in the manner in which he should be deployed. But yeah, there are still a few names out there that could be that could make their way to this roster, and Fabio Carvalho, I think, is one of them. As we wrap up here with this roster talk and kind of looking at these two matches for the Seleção, again, the 24th at the Czech Republic, at home on the 27th to Spain. The talk is, and it should, we are here to win 2 games, and we are here to win the group and be part of the Nations League semifinals, I believe, next summer. But is this the dress rehearsal for Qatar in 2 months, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it is. It could be two things, isn't it? It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. Basically, I think Portugal will treat these games almost as if it was their World Cup games. They have to be at the top of their form. They have to choose their stronger side. They have to select their stronger side. They have to try and win the games. And, in order to be as best prepared as possible, because of the way this World Cup is organised right in the middle of the season, there's no other time. There's not, you usually get 2 or 3 or 4 friendlies, don't you? In the couple of weeks before the World Cup, or 2 or 3 weeks, you have a big training camp as well. Not going to happen this season. So really,
well, they do have that friendly against Nigeria.
Yeah. I've just got one friendly.
But again, just one. Yeah, as you mentioned, just one.
Yeah. And also, even I suppose, because that will be very near to the World Cup itself. That usually in these very last friendlies, they kind of played a little bit half pace because, of course, nobody wants to get injured, and so
absolutely.
So these two matches, I think, absolutely dress rehearsal for the World Cup. I think Portugal will go into them trying to basically fine tune. Fernando Santos will basically be trying to decide what his best side is and go out there, send it out there, and say, okay, get your cohesion going, just try and play yourself into form, because in 2 months' time you'll be out there again.
I will say this as I kind of take the focus to just Nations League now. I'm not from Portugal. Tom, you have a much better understanding of kind of atmosphere and everything in terms of going to the stadiums and watching the national team play. I am so intrigued by let's call it a winner take all match in Portugal, but not in Lisboa and not in Porto. I'm very intrigued by the setting of Braga at the Quarry in a decisive match against Spain. We mentioned before, and we talked about it. The game against Serbia at home. You had everything to play for at home at the Estádio da Luz. Did not show up after the Renato Santos early goal. It was just sit back and relax. We obviously know what happened in 2004 with the Euros at home. Again, at the Estádio. Maybe we shouldn't play at the Estádio da Luz anymore. But I find it an intriguing setting and an intriguing proposition to have this decisive match at Braga, at the Quarry, in what could be a precursor to maybe lifting off this team heading towards the World Cup. What do you think of the decisive match being as in a setting that isn't part of the big 3 stadiums?
Yeah, good decision. I think it's one thing which Portugal do a little bit more than some other countries. I think. Well, maybe that's not fair. I think in Spain it happens quite a lot as well, isn't it? They tend to try and take the national team around to some other venues. Obviously, the biggest games, the games where they can expect 50, 60,000 people, to be in the stadium. They're at the big 3 grounds. But I think it's a good decision. Also showcase that incredible stadium again. It's always a good excuse to do that. And so generally you get I would say the support in Lisbon or in Porto is kind of lacking. But I suppose in one way they're kind of used to big football matches there. When you take it out slightly outside, maybe get a slightly different set of supporters, the local supporters, and they're just give 100% back in, come what may, from start to finish. So good decision. It should be a good match. And like you said, hopefully, of course, when it comes to that match, it will be all of nothing, because to do that, Portugal have to make sure they at least don't lose against the Czech Republic.
Absolutely. This podcast obviously is not the only podcast you should be listening to, as Tom and Matthew Marshall just released a brand new Portugal podcast. They take a look at the starts of Benfica and Braga. Obviously, the issues going on at some of the other clubs like Famalicão and was it Estoril with Port this last weekend. And make sure you guys check out the Portugal podcast as well. Tom obviously has a bunch of great content on PortuGOAL.net. We're obviously lucky to be part of that as well. But I wanted to leave you, Tom, with part of Nathan Moates' most recent article, and I think, and this comes to no one's surprise. Anyone who's read Nathan's stuff, Nathan has a way of articulating exactly what a lot of Portugal fans feel, which is so. Which is a credit to him, being someone who didn't grow up watching Portuguese football nor being Portuguese at all. But I'm going to read it right directly from it. He says, "This squad needs to start believing again. Not simply that they are talented enough. They must believe that they have what it takes to yield the result needed in every situation. We need the mental resilience to adapt and overcome." There's been something missing from this national team, and I think it is belief. Belief in the project, belief in in that this team should win. I think they've played a lot of this team hopes to win. We're talented enough to win. That should just automatically translate to the field. And it hasn't for bits and pieces. This team is not struggling by any means to get wins, but it has struggled, I think, to maybe show up when the lights are the brightest ever since we'll give them the credit of 2018 with the Nations League, I should say. But it does seem that that's the last part or the missing piece to this squad, that there is a lack of belief or a lack of just accepting that they are as good as they should be and proving it and kind of manhandling teams when they should. What was your thought on that piece of Nathan's article there?
Yeah. Thanks for flagging that up as well, Danny. Yeah, another superb article by Nathan. Yeah, I agree. It's curious, isn't it? Because at Euro 2016, Fernando Santos was the first Portugal manager I can really remember who came in and said, "We're going to win this." Of course, he famously said, "I'm only going to return to Portugal after the final. And when I return, there's going to be huge celebrations." And that came to pass. And of course, whether he believed it or not doesn't really matter. But the fact that he said it was really a refreshing change, because, of course, for years and years and years, or ever since I can remember, really, the Portuguese coaches, even Scolari, who was, I think, a very positive personality, always just use that same old trope, isn't it? One game at a time. Let's, concentrate on the group stage, get out of that, and then, let's see how far we can get. No, that's right. I think you can't really imagine Brazil or Argentina or France or Germany, saying those kind of things, can you? You really need to have that mental mindset that you can win it and you can go all the way. And you're absolutely right, Danny. You look at the players on this roster, you look at what they've achieved in club football. These are, without doubt, some of the best players in the world at this moment, without a shadow of a doubt. Bernardo Silva, Barcelona were trying to get him, weren't they? Just, it's been arguably one of the key players for arguably the best side. I know they haven't won the Champions League, but probably the best side in Europe for the last few years, Man City. You've got Ruben Diaz just went there, just absolutely just tore it up. Pep is famously has his he rotates just about every single player, doesn't he? But Ruben Diaz, no. If he's fit, he's in that team. You've got Cancelo. That's just talking about the Man City guys. But Portugal have the players, without a doubt. They have players that are at least the match of any other team in the world. So you're right. Yeah, they need to kind of translate that. They need to show that. They need to summon a little bit more of that spirit. I would even say go a bit further, because I think in 2016, they kind of, Fernando Santos said that. And I suppose the players kind of half bought into it and said, yeah, okay, yeah, let's go into these matches thinking we can win it. But deep down, it was still a huge surprise, wasn't it, that Portugal did win it, especially, in a final against the favourites and the hosts. But now you're right, it's in Qatar, basically a neutral country, and they should just look at themselves, look around, look at their teammates, look at this squad, and they say there's no reason at all why we shouldn't fight to win this thing. So yeah, agree 100%. I think that's going to be possibly Fernando Santos's biggest job now in preparation for this World Cup, is getting their mentality right and getting them really believing that they can, go on and win this. Doesn't, of course, mean they will win it, but they should go out there thinking that it's a legitimate aim.
Yeah, and I, the name there is Fernando Santos, and I think he's at the top of this whole thing here is trying to as the manager, who has now been there for, he's going on almost 8 years. I think 8 years this month, actually, maybe. It's hard for teams to maybe hear that voice for that long with some of the players who have been here for his entire tenure. What the hope is that the talent and the camaraderie that this team hopefully has can maybe override maybe the staleness of Fernando's tenure, I would guess, the last couple of years. But there is everything to play for, Tom. It's a World Cup year. I know 4 years ago it didn't go our way following the Euros here, but you would hope that not that you should play for anyone other than the team, but with Ronaldo and Pep leaving after this World Cup, likely, no matter what Ronaldo said at that gala last night, this is likely his final World Cup. But you just hope that they can figure out a way to get a deep run and that belief in that squad back in, because I think that's the only thing that's really lacking, is the belief in what they're doing. If they can figure that out, I think they are as dangerous as any national team heading into the World Cup I almost said this winter at the World Cup. So I know that you got to get out of here, so I do appreciate your time. As always, an hour went by super quick. The conversation is always great. We greatly appreciate you making time for us. As always, make sure you're following Tom on Twitter at Portugal1. Bookmark Portugal.net for all of your Portuguese coverage in the English language. And as always, Tom, just an absolute treat to have you on and be a part of your coverage on Portugal.net.
Okay, great speaking to you again, Danny. Before I leave, I'm going to return the favour of you just mentioning that the pod that Matt and I just brought out. I would also urge people who are listening to this, if you haven't already, check out the Seleção pod, Danny's previous pod, which is absolutely superb podcast. A little bit different. It's all about the Figo Netflix documentary. And Danny got on the directors or producers, didn't you, of that documentary. It's a really interesting conversation from start to finish. I loved the documentary, and I loved your chat with them, Danny. Really good insight, really interesting stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit off topic, but definitely check that out.
It's a mutual admiration society, Tom. I appreciate that. That podcast was a lot of fun, and we got a lot of good response from it. So greatly appreciate you helping us out there with the promotion of that as well. All the best to you, Tom. We will talk as we officially get on the road to Qatar here after the 27th. But all the best to you, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Cheers, Danny. Speak soon.
All right, Tom. And that will do it here for episode number 66 of the Seleção podcast. My thanks once again to Tom Kundert of Portugal.net. As always, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at selecaopod. Bookmark our website, selecaopod.com. and reach out to us anytime you would like on email, selecaopod@gmail.com, facebook.com/selecaopod also is our Facebook page. Bookmark our YouTube page. Just search the Seleção podcast on YouTube. Bookmark and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Anything you can do in terms of free support, which is subscribing on these platforms, liking our YouTube interviews, subscribing to us on YouTube, subscribing to us on podcast or on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and any other podcasting platform. That's how you help us grow the show without spending any money whatsoever. So we greatly appreciate the support we've always been given, and the support that continues to grow as this podcast grows more and more. So my name is Danny Pinto. I have been your host of episode number 66 of the Seleção podcast, a proud partner of Tom Kundert and PortuGOAL.net. And as always, Força Portugal!